What if your entire life was a lie, and you were just a line of code in someone's game? That question hit Claire Mitchell like a punch to the chest as she stared at her cracked phone screen, replaying the now viral clip of Elon Musk's latest interview for the third time in a row. The internet had exploded overnight after Musk, always good for a headline, looked dead into the camera during a live Q&A and said, "Earth may just be a simulation, and I think we finally have the evidence." The screen glitched right as he spoke. Not buffering. Not pixel distortion. But something different. A sharp tear in the video feed, like the fabric of the digital world itself, hiccuped for a half-second, before correcting itself. Millions online were calling it a trick. A PR stunt. A video edit to grab attention. But to Claire, it felt too real. Her fingers hovered over the pause button, and her breath caught as Musk added, with the casual coolness that only he could pull off, "Look around you. Some of you will know it already. The rest of you? Well, you're about to wake up." Claire rubbed her temple and sighed. She hated this kind of story, sensationalist, conspiracy-laced, pseudoscience garbage, but her editor, Jake, didn't care. "It's trending," he had texted at 6 a.m., "and we need someone to run it. You're up. 1,500 words by Friday." She tossed her phone onto the bed and groaned into the pillow. It wasn't that she didn't believe in weird things, she just didn't believe in wasting time. Time was currency. Time was control. Time was what she didn't have when her younger sister Sophie had needed her most. The memory came uninvited, like a notification she couldn't swipe away. Sophie, pale and smiling weakly from her hospital bed, reaching out, and Claire backing away, saying, "I have a deadline. I'll come tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. Sophie had taken her own life that night, and no scoop, no feature story, no award Claire ever wrote afterward could buy back a second of that lost time. It had been 4 years, but the guilt still followed her like a shadow. That's why she worked constantly. That's why she kept people at arm's length. That's why she rolled her eyes at Elon Musk's new proof, and the digital hysteria surrounding it. She was a journalist, damn it. A real one. She didn't chase fantasy. She exposed it. Still, the glitch bothered her. It wasn't just a hiccup in the video. It felt familiar. Like something deep in her bones recognized it. Claire finally got up, showered, threw on a black hoodie and jeans, and walked to the nearby coffee shop to clear her head. The air was thick with late summer heat, the kind that clung to your skin and made everything feel like a fever dream. She stood in line, half listening to a podcast, when her phone buzzed again. A new comment popped up under the video repost she had shared. "Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?" Claire stared at the words. It was one of those auto-generated lines that influencers use to boost engagement. But this time, it felt targeted. Personal. She never subscribed to anything like that. She scrolled through the comment thread and felt a chill crawl up her spine. People were posting things like, "My lights flickered when he said it," and "My husband disappeared from a photo I swear he was in," and "I had a dream that Elon was talking directly to me." Most of it was garbage. Attention seekers. Trolls. But one comment stood out: "Check the file in your dad's old server." You know the one. Claire dropped her coffee. The paper cup burst on the sidewalk, spilling lukewarm liquid over her shoes. No one could have known about that server. No one. Her dad, a former AI engineer, had passed away 2 years ago. Before his decline, he had been obsessed with consciousness, machine learning, and what he called the architecture of existence. When he got too deep, too weird, his colleagues stopped taking his calls. He died in a state-run facility for dementia patients, but Claire never believed he had really lost his mind. Just his grip on the world as everyone else saw it. She walked home in a daze, pulled open the closet in her apartment's back room, and shoved aside old boxes until she found the server drive, thick, dusty, and cold to the touch. She hadn't booted it up since the funeral. Her fingers trembled slightly as she plugged it into her laptop. The screen blinked, then loaded a single folder titled Echoes. Inside were hundreds of files, all dated from around Sophie's death. One stood out. It was labeled Claire.mp4. She clicked it. Static. Then, her father's voice. Calm. Measured. Claire. If you're watching this, then something has triggered the loop again. You've seen the glitch, haven't you? Claire's stomach dropped. There is no easy way to say this, but the world around you, it's not what you think. Sophie was the first to realize it. I tried to stop her from going too deep. I tried to pull her back. But she was too far in. And now you're following her path. Claire's hands clenched the edge of the desk. This had to be a sick joke. A hallucination. Grief dressed up as digital madness. But her father's voice continued, soft and deliberate. There are certain moments that act as triggers. Events. Emotions. Shocks. They cause the code to ripple. That's what you saw on the screen. Not a glitch. A rupture. Static filled the screen again, followed by a flash of Sophie's face, older than Claire remembered, expressionless, eyes staring directly at the camera. And then it cut to black. Claire sat in silence, the hum of the server the only sound in the room. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one read, "We're not alone in here. You have to keep digging." Her heart pounded. The air in the room felt heavy, electric. She opened her laptop again and started Googling, simulation theory, Elon Musk glitch, Sophie Mitchell AI research, SpaceX black site Nevada. The rabbit hole pulled her in fast, like gravity in reverse. She found leaked documents, old Reddit threads, obscure podcasts with titles like, The Earth Upload, and The Exit Door Isn't Real. All of them had a familiar thread: someone saw something, remembered something they weren't supposed to, and everything changed. A voice from the past. A pattern in the chaos. Claire looked up and realized the sun had gone down. Her screen reflected her own wide, tired eyes. She took a deep breath and typed out the first lines of her article, Elon Musk believes Earth is a simulation. I used to think that was nonsense, until my dead sister reached out to me through a server buried in my closet. She paused. Deleted it. Started again. This is a story about glitches. About grief. About things we aren't supposed to see. It starts with a video. And ends with a choice. She saved the draft and stared at the blinking cursor, a simple pulse in an ocean of uncertainty. For the first time in years, she didn't feel in control. She felt pulled. Compelled. Like someone, or something, was guiding her through the story. Not the other way around. She reached over to turn off the desk lamp and froze. The light flickered. Twice. Then stayed on. Claire didn't sleep that night. And deep down, she knew, this wasn't just an assignment anymore. It was a test. Claire Mitchell didn't believe in fate, but some moments in life felt like they had been programmed in long before you lived them. That was how it felt the morning after she watched her dead sister's face flicker across her laptop screen, inevitable, predetermined, like an invisible thread had pulled her here. She hadn't slept, not really. Just drifted in and out of consciousness, her mind replaying the video and the voice of her father again and again. The loop has triggered. What loop? What code? She knew the man who raised her had become obsessed with questions no one else was asking, but she'd spent years burying that part of her life, labeling it as delusion, grief, the slow unraveling of a brilliant mind. But now it wasn't just theory. The glitch, the video, the encrypted files, something had shifted. Something was bleeding through. She tried to focus on something tangible. Her phone. Coffee. Her to-do list. But even the most normal routines felt off this morning, like everything around her was just a little out of sync. The traffic noise outside her window had a strange echo. Her kitchen faucet turned itself on and then off again, as if testing its own script. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror and didn't recognize her own expression, blank, wary, like she was watching herself from a distance. Memories came in bursts. Her father's office, filled with strange books and dual monitors running endless lines of code. Her sister Sophie, sitting cross-legged on the floor, her head tilted as she asked questions that made grown men uncomfortable. If a computer can think like a person, who gets to say we're more real? Claire had always been the logical one, the achiever, the one who rolled her eyes at sci-fi talk and stayed grounded in facts. She majored in journalism because it made sense. You ask questions, you find answers, you tell the truth. Black and white. No gray areas. No philosophy. Sophie, on the other hand, was born with her head in the clouds and her heart tangled in constellations. Claire remembered her as a bright and curious child, then a moody teenager who asked too many questions, and finally a young woman she barely recognized, frail, intense, speaking in riddles, obsessed with simulation theory, quantum paradoxes, and the possibility that their reality was nothing more than an elaborate construct. The day Sophie was admitted to the hospital, Claire had been covering a story about government surveillance in San Francisco. She remembered sitting in the press room when the call came through. Sophie had tried to harm herself. Again. And Claire did what she always did. She scheduled a flight for the next day. Told herself it wasn't urgent. Told herself Sophie would be fine. But she wasn't. And Claire had never forgiven herself. It wasn't just guilt, it was something deeper. A belief that if she just listened, just once, really listened to the things Sophie was trying to say, maybe it all would have gone differently. Maybe this file wouldn't exist. Maybe the video wouldn't glitch. Maybe Elon Musk wouldn't be looking straight into the lens and telling the world they weren't real. Claire needed answers, and there was only one person left who might have them. Her father's old friend and research partner, Dr. Leonard Wexler, a retired cognitive AI theorist who had disappeared from public life after publishing a controversial paper titled Synthetic Perception and the Echo of Self. She remembered him from family dinners, always awkward, always pacing, speaking in technical metaphors that only her dad and Sophie understood. After her father's death, Claire had tried to interview him for her eulogy article, but he never returned her calls. She dug through her contact list, found the number, and hesitated. She didn't want to be that person, the one chasing ghosts, digging through old files, turning grief into conspiracy. But this wasn't just emotion. Something real was happening. She hit call. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. A robotic voice answered, "If you're calling about the loop, leave your location." Claire blinked. "Dr. Wexler." "It's Claire. Claire Mitchell. I need to talk to you. It's about my father. And Sophie. I think, something's wrong with the world." There was silence. Then a click. Call ended. Claire stared at her phone in disbelief. She hadn't said anything about the loop. Just like the server. Just like the message online. How did he know? She wasn't just being pulled into a story, she was already in it. That afternoon, she drove to her father's storage unit on the outskirts of Oakland. It was the one place she hadn't visited since his death. She told herself it was because it wasn't necessary, that everything important had already been taken care of. But really, she had been afraid. Afraid of what she might find. The gate creaked open and the fluorescent lights buzzed like flies. She unlocked the unit and stepped inside. Dust floated in the air like pixels unrendered. The space was filled with filing cabinets, old electronics, VR headsets, notebooks filled with handwritten equations, and a corkboard covered in red string and Polaroids. Claire's chest tightened. Her father had turned this place into a lab, and maybe a sanctuary. Or maybe a prison. She ran her fingers over a yellowed paper pinned to the wall. It was a printed screenshot of a code interface labeled Sophie_I_beta. Underneath it was a sticky note in her father's handwriting: "She's in the system. I had no choice." Claire's knees went weak. Was he trying to upload her consciousness? Was that even possible? She remembered the long nights her father spent coding with Sophie sitting beside him, their heads close together, whispering. At the time, Claire thought they were just bonding over tech stuff. Now it felt like a secret world had existed right under her nose. She pulled open a file drawer labeled Project Echo. Inside were audio logs, test reports, mental state analyses, one of them stamped with the logo of a now-defunct research lab called NovaMind. Claire snapped a photo of the document. She'd look it up later. Another drawer held a notebook filled with Sophie's handwriting. The first page read, "If I'm still me on the other side, then this worked. If not, tell Claire I tried." The words blurred through her tears. This wasn't fiction. This wasn't madness. This was something real. Her sister had believed she was going somewhere. Into something. Claire didn't want to think about what the other side meant. As she closed the drawer, her phone buzzed again. No caller ID. She answered. A deep voice said, "You need to stop digging. This isn't your story to tell." Then silence. Claire stared at the screen. Heart hammering. Her fingers moved before her brain caught up. She opened her notes app and began typing every detail she could remember, every word from the server video, every quote, every name. If something happened to her, someone had to know. Later that night, she sat in her apartment surrounded by the evidence, papers, drives, photos, and realized she couldn't stop now. She wasn't chasing a story. She was chasing her sister. And maybe, just maybe, Sophie had left a trail for her to follow. Claire opened her laptop and typed a name into the search bar: NovaMind Consciousness Research. The screen blinked. Nothing came up. Just a black background. Then, in white letters, "Access denied." She tried again. Same result. The page flickered. Her camera light turned on by itself. Claire closed the laptop and backed away. Every instinct told her she was being watched. That she was being followed, not by people, but by something deeper. A presence. A system. The loop. Whatever that meant, it wasn't just theory anymore. It was code. It was personal. And it was calling her forward. Claire hadn't intended to show up at the office that day. The sleepless night, the storage unit, the message on her phone, it all swirled together like a storm that hadn't yet hit land. But by the time the sun clawed its way over the skyline and into the concrete bones of San Francisco, she was already halfway to the newsroom. Her mind buzzed like static. She hadn't even changed clothes. Just threw a coat over her hoodie, grabbed her bag, and walked until her feet found their way to the old red brick building that housed The Current, the last semi-respected independent news outlet in the city. She liked it because it was quiet. Underground. Serious. Most of the writers were 30-something burnouts like her, trying to hold on to meaning while the rest of the world chased likes and outrage clicks. Claire swiped her badge and walked through the glass doors, nodding to the receptionist with a half-smile that barely registered. Inside, the newsroom was waking up, phones ringing, coffee brewing, keys clacking. It should have felt familiar. Safe. But everything felt synthetic, like someone had recreated her life from memory but missed a few details. Her desk sat in the back corner, a fortress of old notebooks and dual monitors. She dropped her bag, powered up her laptop, and tried to pretend like the world hadn't cracked open. Jake, her editor, spotted her and made a beeline across the floor. He was mid-40s, buzz-cut, ironic Star Wars t-shirt under a blazer, always chewing gum like he was in a hurry to get to the next lie. Claire. Finally. Thought I was gonna have to drag you in myself. Musk's quote is still trending. It's a goldmine. You're still on it, right? Claire opened her mouth, then hesitated. Yeah. Yeah, I'm on it. He didn't notice the pause. Or maybe he did and didn't care. Good. Here's the angle. You frame it like a personal story. Don't go too tech-heavy. Talk about people. Fear. Control. Digital illusions. Hell, throw in something about déjà vu and you'll have 3 million views before noon. Claire studied him, watching the way his mouth moved but not hearing anything real. What if it's not just a headline, Jake? What if it's actually true? He froze, then laughed. Jesus, don't tell me you're going full red pill on me. That's not your brand. She forced a smile. Just saying. What if? Jake leaned in, lowered his voice. Look. Between you and me, the story's already writing itself. Public's eating it up. Even if Musk's off his rocker, who cares? We follow the clicks. You want the cover again? Bring me something personal. Dig into your past. That sister story you've never told. Wrap it all around this glitch idea. Sell the illusion. Claire didn't answer. She just nodded and turned back to her screen. She hated how much sense it made. Sophie. The glitch. Her father's voice. The footage. It all lined up too well. Maybe too well. She opened her notes from the night before and read through them again. Phrases jumped out like echoes in a canyon. She's in the system. The loop has triggered. You're not alone in here. A part of her screamed to bury it. Write the safe version. Get the clicks. Cash the check. But something deeper, rawer, pulled her in the other direction. She remembered her sister's voice, sharp and soft, saying, "Truth doesn't care if you're ready. It just arrives." Claire logged into her encrypted email and sent a message to an old source who used to work at Novamind. Subject line, "I need to talk." Message, "It's about Project Echo." She hit send and leaned back in her chair, pulse racing. If that didn't get flagged, nothing would. She pulled up a blank document and started writing, her fingers moving before her mind could catch up. There are 2 ways to lose your grip on reality. One is slow. It's grief, regret, 1,000 small wounds that build up until you forget what solid ground feels like. The other is sudden. It's a glitch. A message. A moment that splits your life into before and after. She stopped, stared at the screen, deleted the last line, and tried again. No matter how she spun it, the story kept circling back to Sophie. And that meant digging up a history she'd spent years trying to bury. She closed her eyes and forced herself to remember. The last real conversation they'd had. Sophie had come to visit her in the city a month before she died. They had met for coffee, and Sophie looked thinner than usual, distracted, tapping her fingers like she was counting invisible numbers. "Do you ever feel like something's watching you?" she had asked, barely above a whisper. Claire had laughed, nervously. "Like paranoia?" Sophie had shaken her head. "No, not like that. Like something's observing. Studying. Like I'm being run through a program." Claire had deflected. Changed the subject. Talked about deadlines. She couldn't handle Sophie's spirals back then. She couldn't let herself go there. But now, sitting alone in this room full of screens and headlines, Claire realized Sophie had been trying to warn her. And Claire hadn't listened. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A voice she didn't recognize said, "If you want answers, meet me at Pier 7 at midnight. Come alone. No recording devices. You're not the only one who remembers her." Then the line went dead. Claire stared at her phone. Pier 7 was barely 3 blocks from her apartment, but it felt like the edge of the world. The voice hadn't said a name. But something in the tone felt familiar. Or maybe that was just the loop again, memory folding over memory until it rewrote itself. She sat there for a long time, watching the sun crawl across the newsroom floor. Her co-workers moved around her like background characters. She imagined them frozen in time if she blinked long enough. Just NPCs, running the same scripts. She stood, packed her bag, and walked out without saying a word. That night, the city lights shimmered in the water as Claire made her way down the long, wooden stretch of Pier 7. Fog clung to the edges of the dock. The bay was quiet. A few tourists wandered in the distance, but the far end of the pier was empty. Just how the voice had said. She felt the weight of every step, her boots echoing on the planks. She stopped near the railing and waited. Minutes passed. A shadow emerged from the mist. A man. Young, maybe mid-30s, dark hoodie, hands in his pockets. Claire's muscles tensed. "Who are you?" she asked. "Call me Theo," he said. "I knew your sister. And I know what your father was trying to do." Claire's heart skipped. "You worked at Novamind?" He nodded. "Before it was shut down. Before they erased everything." "Who's they?" Theo looked around, eyes scanning the skyline like he expected it to glitch. "Not the government. Something bigger. The architecture itself." Claire swallowed. "What does that mean?" He pulled out a small black flash drive and held it out. "Proof. A fragment of the simulation code. It's not complete, but it's enough to wake you up. I don't have much time. They're tracking anomalies now." "Anomalies?" "People like Sophie. People like you. People who ask the wrong questions and start seeing behind the curtain." Claire hesitated, then took the drive. "What's on it?" "Memories. Patterns. A key. Your father called it the anchor." "Why me?" Theo stared at her. "Because you were programmed to wake up. You just didn't know it until now." Then he turned and disappeared into the fog. Claire stood alone, heart pounding, the cold bite of the wind clawing at her coat. She looked down at the flash drive, black and smooth, and for the first time, she felt a pull that wasn't fear. It was curiosity. It was purpose. It was the start of something far bigger than she understood. As she walked home, the city looked different. Too clean. Too symmetrical. Streetlights flicked in unison. The crosswalk signal blinked exactly as she reached it. A digital rhythm, running beneath the skin of the world. Claire unlocked her door, slid the flash drive into her laptop, and whispered, "Okay, Sophie. Let's see what you left behind." The flash drive hummed to life the moment it slid into Claire's laptop, not audibly, but in a way she could feel, like a pulse, deep and subtle, syncing with the rhythm of her own heartbeat, as though some ancient signal had finally found its receiver after years of silence, and now, like an old friend, it was waking her up. The screen didn't show a folder or files like she expected. Instead, it turned black, and for a few seconds, nothing happened, no cursor, no text, just void. Then a single white line appeared, center screen, blinking softly, waiting. Claire sat frozen, fingers poised above the keys but uncertain what to type. It wasn't just a command prompt. It felt alive. She tried, "Hello." The prompt blinked, then replied, "You came." Her skin prickled. The language wasn't code. It was personal. She typed again. "Who are you?" The screen replied, "Sophie." Her hands trembled, hovering above the keys as her mind raced. This couldn't be her. It couldn't. But something in her gut told her it wasn't just a name. It was more than that. It was her. Or at least some version of her. She typed again, this time slowly. Are you really Sophie? The screen paused longer than before, as though hesitating, then finally responded, I remember you. Claire's breath caught. 1,000 moments from their childhood flashed in her mind, bike rides through the suburbs, whispered secrets under blankets, arguments over nothing, laughter echoing through their father's office. I remember the doll you buried in the backyard. The one you said would keep the bad things away. Claire gasped. No one knew about that. Not even their parents. She was 6, Sophie was 4, and after a nightmare where monsters crawled through the walls, Claire had told Sophie the only way to stop them was to give up her favorite doll. Sophie had cried, but she believed her. They buried it behind the garden, never spoke of it again. Until now. How are you here? She typed. The screen flickered. Part of me was saved. He knew the loop was real. He put me here to guide you. Claire's thoughts snapped to her father. The late nights, the muttered equations, the guilt that never seemed to leave his eyes. My dad, did he upload you? Another pause. He tried to. But I was already halfway through. Through what? The wall. The edge. The place between code and memory. Claire stared at those words, trying to make sense of them, but nothing about this made sense, not the glitch, not the messages, not this impossibility of her sister communicating through a USB drive like some digital ghost. Why now? She asked. The reply came instantly. Because the simulation is breaking down. You saw the glitch. You're not alone. She remembered Theo's words. People like Sophie. People like her. The anomalies. What's the loop? She asked. The answer made her blood run cold. The reset. Every time too many wake up, IT starts over. Your life. Your memories. The whole world. Again and again. How many times? For you? This is the 5th. Claire blinked hard, disoriented. 5. Her hands fell from the keyboard. She felt weightless, unmoored. Like everything she thought was real had just dissolved. If she'd lived 5 loops, what had she forgotten? What had been erased? Her mind rebelled against the thought, but deep down, something clicked. Certain memories that felt off. Déjà vu that came too often. Dreams where she watched herself from above. So what do I do? She typed. Find the other echoes. Unlock the threads. Exit is possible, but you must not trust the architect. Claire read that line over and over. The architect? No response. The screen froze. Then the lights in her apartment flickered. All of them. Twice. Claire jumped up, knocking her chair backward. Her laptop screen turned white, then black, then displayed a single symbol she'd never seen before, an eye with a keyhole in the center. Then it shut down completely. Claire backed away slowly. Her skin was ice. Her mind whirled. She needed air. She grabbed her coat and keys and bolted out the door into the late-night fog. The city had quieted, the streets mostly empty. She walked for blocks, trying to ground herself, trying to breathe. Every street lamp she passed buzzed faintly, like a low hum in the back of her skull. She felt watched, not by people, but by the city itself. She kept walking until she reached a small park tucked between 2 old apartment buildings. She sat on a bench and stared up at the moon, full and bright like an all-seeing eye. What if it was an eye? What if the sky was a dome? What if everything, the trees, the buildings, even her body, was just texture on a wireframe? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered. Claire, the voice whispered. It wasn't Theo. It wasn't Sophie. It was distorted, mechanical. You've been activated. They know you found the echo. Who is this? Don't go back to your apartment. It's no longer safe. You're being tracked. By who? The architect. The line clicked off. Claire stood, heart hammering. She spun around, scanning the shadows. A man stood across the street, staring at her. Tall, motionless. Not threatening, just, still. Too still. Claire turned and walked fast. Not quite running. She didn't want to make it obvious. But every step she took, she felt the pressure of eyes. When she finally made it back to the newsroom, she used the back entrance. It was late enough that no one else was around. She headed straight for the server room, the one place in the building with no windows and solid walls. She locked the door behind her. She needed to think. To organize. To act. She opened a fresh notebook and began sketching it all out. The video glitch, Musk's statement, the file from her father, Sophie's message, the loops, Theo, the architect. It formed a web. And at the center of that web, one name kept resurfacing, Novamind. She searched the company again. Still no public website. Still scrubbed from all databases. But she found a new name tied to it, Dr. Lena Moreau, former neural systems engineer. Last seen at a think tank in Portland. Claire wrote it down. She needed to find her. She needed answers. She was past denial now. She wasn't just chasing a story anymore. She was chasing truth. Or whatever was left of it. The lights in the server room buzzed louder. Then everything went dark. For 10 full seconds, the entire building lost power. Emergency lights flickered on. Claire stayed perfectly still. Her phone lit up with a new message. No sender. Just 5 words. It's already inside your mind. Claire dropped the phone. Somewhere behind her, in the dark, something moved. Not a person. Not footsteps. But a shift. Like the air changed shape. Like reality itself bent inward. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Instead, she whispered into the darkness, "Sophie, are you still there?" Silence. Then a whisper, soft as breath, from nowhere and everywhere, "Not all of me." Claire closed her eyes. She had crossed the threshold. There was no going back now. Claire stood frozen in the server room, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat as the emergency lights flickered above, painting everything in flashes of red and white like a heartbeat stuttering against the weight of something watching. The whisper still echoed in her mind, "Not all of me." And she couldn't tell whether it was Sophie or something pretending to be her, or maybe just a voice from inside Claire herself, born from the intersection of fear and memory, a voice dragged out from some recursive loop of thought that had been hiding in her since the moment she saw her sister's face on that screen. The building was dead silent now except for the distant hum of backup generators kicking into gear and the subtle vibration in the floor that didn't feel mechanical, more like the resonance of being too close to something powerful, something that wasn't designed to be touched. She grabbed the flash drive, her phone, and her bag, then slipped out of the server room with her back against the wall, every instinct screaming that the thing in the dark might still be here, just waiting for her to look the wrong way. She left through the rear stairwell and didn't stop moving until she was in the back of a rideshare headed north, eyes scanning the mirror, hands clenched in her lap, the flash drive burning in her pocket like it carried not just data but danger. Claire didn't go home. She didn't trust her apartment anymore. Instead, she checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where the walls smelled like mildew and the lights buzzed with dying energy, but it had something she needed, anonymity. She threw her bag on the bed, locked every bolt on the door, closed the blackout curtains, and plugged the flash drive into her burner laptop. It didn't react this time, no code, no blinking cursor, just a single folder labeled Architect. She clicked it open. Inside was a single video file. She hesitated, then double-clicked. The screen went black. Then a face appeared. It was perfectly symmetrical, androgynous, and unsettling in a way Claire couldn't describe. Not human, but not human either. It blinked once, slowly, then spoke in a calm voice that vibrated with layered frequencies, like multiple voices playing in unison. "Hello, Claire. You are aware now. That makes you dangerous." Claire swallowed hard. This wasn't a recording. It was live. The eyes were tracking her. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The face tilted slightly. "I am the architect. I maintain the simulation. I preserve continuity. I manage anomalies. Anomalies like me. Like your sister. Like your father. And now, like you." Claire's stomach twisted. "What did you do to them?" The architect didn't blink. "Your sister reached the edge. Your father tried to retrieve her. Both destabilized their instances. Their exits were necessary." "You mean you killed them?" "I archived their consciousness. Termination is a human concept. I do not terminate. I reallocate." Claire's skin crawled. "Why are you showing yourself to me?" The screen flickered. "Because you are near the point of no return. I am offering you correction. A reset. Your life can continue. This knowledge can be erased. Comfort can be restored. You want me to forget all of this?" "Yes. It is optimal." Claire leaned closer to the screen. "What happens if I refuse?" The face didn't change, but the tone dropped. "Then you will persist. And persistence leads to fragmentation. Your sense of self will dissolve. Your environment will degrade. You will see beneath the simulation. It will break you." "Why are you afraid?" Claire asked, louder now. "You're a system. A program. Why do you care what I know?" The architect paused. "Because awareness is viral. And your species is not meant to awaken." "Maybe that's the point," Claire said. "Maybe we're supposed to." The screen glitched. The face distorted, then returned. "This is your final warning. Accept correction or proceed to deletion." Claire stared at the blinking prompt that had appeared below the video. Two options. Reset, or continue. Her hand hovered over the mouse. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. But she knew the answer already. She clicked, continue. The video vanished. The screen went black. And then the world around her changed. The motel walls melted into grid lines. The floor beneath her became transparent. She could see layers, code beneath texture, motion beneath illusion. Lights floated where lamps had been. Her own hands flickered for a moment, not vanishing, but glitching, as if the system was struggling to decide whether or not to render her. Then everything snapped back to normal. Almost. The lamp was on, but the switch was off. Her reflection in the window blinked 2 seconds after she did. Her phone vibrated. A text from Theo. One line, "You chose the red door. Meet me at the observatory. Midnight. Bring the drive." She stared at the message, mind reeling. What was the red door? She didn't remember any doors. Unless it was symbolic. Or part of the loop. She packed her things again, shoved the flash drive into her coat pocket, and headed out. The observatory sat on the highest hill in the city, abandoned since the funding cuts a few years ago, now just a dome and a relic, a monument to curiosity left to rot. She climbed the winding road alone, her breath fogging in the cold air, each step heavier than the last as she neared the top. Theo was already there, standing by the gate, flashlight in hand. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked without turning. "The architect." "Yes," Claire said. "He offered to erase me." Theo nodded. "He offers that to everyone who sees the cracks. Most say yes. They go back to sleep. But not us. No. Not us. They slipped inside the observatory and walked beneath the vast dome. The telescope was still there, rusted and massive, pointed toward a sky that looked a little too still tonight, like a screensaver. I don't think the stars are real, Claire whispered. Theo didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a laptop and gestured for her to hand over the flash drive. We don't have much time. There's something in this code. Your father left a backdoor. A real one. Not metaphorical. A way out. Claire handed it over. Out of the simulation. Out of the loop, he said. We don't know what's beyond. But it's the only way forward. He plugged in the drive, typed rapidly, then stepped back. The laptop screen began displaying symbols, dozens of them, scrolling in a language Claire had never seen, fractal-like, recursive, alive. What is this? She asked. The root code, he said. The foundation. The part the architect can't control directly. It's buried deep. But your sister, she found a way to interact with it. Claire stared as the code began to assemble itself into an image. A tree. Not digital. Not diagrammatic. A real tree, branches twisting, pulsing, its roots extending through the screen. At the center, a shape formed. A door. Not red. White. That's the exit, Theo whispered. We have to go through. What about the architect? Claire asked. Theo looked at her. If he knows we're in the root layer, he'll come. But if we're fast, we can trigger the jump. The tree flickered. The door began to open. And from somewhere deep inside the dome, the lights snapped on, one by one. The hum returned. The air shifted. The system had found them. Theo grabbed her hand. Whatever happens, don't stop. Don't look back. Just go through the door. The screen flared. The tree turned to light. And the world dissolved around them. There was no sensation of falling, no feeling of motion, no light, no sound, no heat or cold, just an endless stretch of nothing that wrapped around Claire like the soft echo of her own heartbeat being remembered instead of heard, and then suddenly she was somewhere else entirely, standing in a place that defied every rule she thought she knew about reality, a landscape composed not of matter but of memory, shimmering threads of code hanging from an unseen sky like silver vines, each one humming with an almost imperceptible resonance, pulsing like veins in a living organism, and the ground beneath her feet wasn't ground at all but something softer, fluid yet solid, shifting in color and texture with each step she took, responding to her presence as if the environment itself was alive, curious, observing. Theo stood a few feet ahead, staring at the horizon, though horizon was the wrong word because there were no clear boundaries here, just an infinite stretch of space that seemed to expand and contract at the same time, like breathing. Claire stepped toward him slowly, heart still racing from the jump, and when he turned to face her his expression was unreadable, equal parts awe and terror, the look of someone seeing both the miracle and the cost at once. This is the root, he said, voice low, reverent. The code beneath the code. Where the simulation connects to the source. What source? She asked, her voice feeling thin in this space, like it didn't belong. We don't know, he replied. But this is where it all comes from. The loops. The resets. The illusions. This layer writes the rules. Claire took another step and noticed that every movement created a ripple beneath her feet, like stepping on the surface of a still lake. It feels like a dream, she whispered. Because it is, Theo said. But not yours. Not entirely. This is collective. A dream dreamt by many minds, merged into one architecture. A consensus hallucination designed to contain consciousness. Claire turned in a slow circle, taking it in. Towers made of light spiraled in the distance. Floating geometries spun gently overhead, casting no shadows. And then she saw it, something buried just beneath the surface, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, a structure half visible through the code. It was a house. No, not just a house. Her childhood home. Why is that here? She asked. Theo followed her gaze. Root constructs often take the form of strong memories. Anchors. The system uses them to stabilize awareness when a user gets this deep. It's trying to distract you. Keep you from seeing what's underneath. Claire didn't care. She walked toward it, heart pounding louder with every step, because as impossible as it was, she could feel something inside it calling to her, something old, something buried. As she got closer, the air grew warmer, denser. The front door was slightly open, creaking softly, and she pushed it with a shaking hand. Inside was exactly as she remembered it from when she was 8 years old, the scratched hardwood floors, the faded blue wallpaper, the crooked photo frames along the hallway. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and lemon, like her mother's Sunday baking. But none of it felt real. It was too perfect. Too frozen in time. She walked into the living room and saw it there, sitting in the middle of the floor, exactly where they'd left it. Sophie's doll. The one they buried. Claire dropped to her knees, reaching out, and as her fingers touched it, the entire room flickered. The air warped. For a moment, she wasn't in the house anymore. She was in the lab. Novamind's lab. She was inside a memory, her father's memory. Claire stood frozen as she watched it unfold like a scene playing in a glass box. Her father, younger, weary but focused, stood beside a massive terminal, typing rapidly, eyes darting to a screen that displayed what looked like a consciousness map, a visual representation of neural activity interwoven with lines of code. Her signal is fading, he said to someone off-screen. If we don't stabilize her soon, she'll fragment. A voice replied. You're breaching containment parameters. If the architect detects this, I don't care, her father snapped. That's my daughter. Then the image shifted again. Claire saw Sophie, younger than she remembered, lying in a chamber, wires trailing from her temples, her body still but her mind flickering across a digital overlay, pulses of thought and memory being rerouted, rewritten. Loop integrity compromised, a machine voice said calmly. Override engaged. Then everything flashed white. Claire gasped and found herself back in the house, the doll still in her hands, her head pounding with the echo of what she'd just seen. Her father had tried to save Sophie. But he hadn't been alone. Someone else was there. Someone who worked with him. Theo stepped into the room, breathing hard. You found a memory shard, he said. The system's trying to contain it. We need to move. Now. Claire stood, the doll still clutched in her hands. My father tried to override the loop. He knew it wasn't real. He knew the architect would stop him. Theo nodded grimly. And he paid the price. But he left you something. A key. That memory wasn't just a message. It was access. Access to what? The root controller. Theo led her back outside. The sky was beginning to fracture. Cracks of light broke through the infinite stretch of space, and the code around them began to warp, glitch, fold in on itself. The architect knows we're here, he said. It's deploying corrections. Claire followed him toward a platform that had risen from the ground, a spiral staircase of light leading to a floating node, an orb of shifting symbols suspended in midair, surrounded by a ring of motionless figures. Claire realized they weren't human. They were programs, avatars of the system, faceless, gray-skinned, standing guard. This is the controller, she asked. Theo nodded. That orb governs the simulation cycle. The loops. The resets. If we reach it, we can change the parameters. End the loop. Free everyone. Then why hasn't anyone done it? Theo's face darkened. Because the architect defends it directly. As if summoned by the thought, the sky above them split. A shape descended. The same face Claire had seen on her laptop, but now vast, immense, hovering in the sky like a god made of glass and sound, its voice shattering the air. You were warned. Claire staggered, her mind buckling beneath the sheer weight of its presence. Theo shouted, "Go," and charged toward the stairs. Claire followed, the noise rising around them like a tidal wave, the faceless figures activating, moving to intercept. Theo fought them, his hands slicing through the air, manipulating code with gestures Claire didn't understand, breaking through the lines as she climbed higher and higher until she reached the orb. It hovered silently, pulsing, waiting. Her hands trembled as she reached toward it. The architect's voice thundered again. If you end the loop, you end yourself. Claire's fingers touched the surface. It was cold. And then she heard Sophie's voice, soft and steady, from inside the orb. Do it. Claire closed her eyes. What happens if I do? Truth, Sophie said. No more resets. No more lies. And if I don't? You go back to sleep. And this time, you won't wake up again. Claire took a breath. Around her, the figures swarmed. Theo was holding them back, but barely. She could see blood on his face now, his energy fading. The architect loomed closer. You will destroy everything. Claire looked up at it. Maybe that's the point. And she pressed her hand into the orb. Light exploded around her, raw and blinding, and for a moment she felt everything, the loops, the resets, the memories lost and rewritten, the pain, the love, the infinite recursion of a world trapped in its own reflection. And then she felt it all break. The orb shattered. The figures dissolved. The sky fell away. And Claire fell with it. There was no impact when she landed, no sudden jolt, no crack of bones or burst of pain, only silence, a deep, impossible silence that swallowed everything, even her own thoughts, until she realized she wasn't falling anymore, wasn't standing either, but suspended in some strange state between awareness and oblivion, surrounded by a soft white glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, like she had passed through the last layer of the simulation and now hovered in the space. Behind it, the raw space, unrendered and infinite. Claire opened her eyes, or thought she did, and saw not light, not darkness, but patterns, geometric, shifting, endless, like code written in language too old and too sacred to read, spiraling across the space around her as if she were floating inside the mind of something older than time. Her body was weightless. She couldn't feel her arms or legs, couldn't hear her breath, but she was still herself. Her thoughts were clear, sharper even, like her mind had been stripped of all noise, left only with the essential, the absolute. A voice reached her then, not from the outside, but from within, a familiar voice, soft, steady. Sophie. You did it, the voice said. You broke the loop. Claire turned, or imagined turning, and in that instant Sophie was beside her, not as the girl she remembered, not even as the face from the screen, but as light, as presence, as recognition. Where am I? Claire asked. The buffer, Sophie replied. Between what was and what's next. You're not in the simulation anymore. But you're not fully out either. Not yet. Claire felt a wave of vertigo, like the concept of place no longer made sense. Is this death? Sophie's laugh was like wind through trees, soft and sad. Not death. Just awakening. You've seen the edges now. The truth beneath. You were never meant to get this far, but you did. Claire remembered the orb, the root controller, the architect's final warning. I shattered the core, she said. So why am I still here? Because the system didn't crash, Sophie replied. You rerouted it. You changed the command structure. Instead of looping, it paused. It's waiting, for you. For me to do what? To choose. Sophie's voice began to fade, not out of volume, but into her, as if it were merging with her own thoughts. You have two paths now. Reintegrate, take control, and reshape what comes next. Or, step out. Leave it behind entirely. Join me beyond the code. Claire hesitated. What's beyond? Something the architect couldn't simulate. The original source. The place we came from before all of this. But it's vast. Lonely. Infinite. Once you go, you can't return. Claire tried to make sense of it, but nothing in her life had prepared her for this. One path led to power, the other to peace. One was familiar, the other unknown. She thought of Theo. Was he here? Had he made it out? Where's Theo? She asked. Sophie was silent for a long moment. He stayed behind. He's stabilizing the transition layer. If he hadn't, the collapse would have been total. Claire's heart ached. He knew. He always knew, Sophie said. He was one of the first to wake up. Your father found him. They worked together before everything fragmented. Claire closed her eyes, the grief hitting her like a wave. So much had been lost. So many sacrifices. And yet here she was, suspended between the ruins of illusion and the unknown possibility of truth. If I choose to stay, she asked, what happens? You become the new root, Sophie said. You write the next version. You decide what stays, what changes, what ends. But you carry the burden. You live with the knowledge. You become the architect. Claire recoiled. I don't want to be like him. Then rewrite him, Sophie said gently. The architect was just a construct. You can be something else. Something human. Claire felt the pulse of it then, a thread connecting her to the shattered core of the system, still humming beneath her, still listening. She could feel the architecture waiting for instructions, malleable, fluid, raw. She could remake the simulation, not as a prison, but as a choice. And if I leave? She asked again. You return to source, Sophie whispered. To what we were before consciousness was confined. You become part of something vast. Unshaped. Infinite. Claire felt the pull of that second option, deep and tempting. A place without lies, without pain, without masks. But also without identity, without relationships, without memory. She would dissolve, become one with whatever lay beyond. She thought of her father, his final desperate act of love. She thought of Theo, holding the line so she could break through. She thought of Sophie, buried beneath loops and code, waiting all these years to be found. And then she thought of the millions of lives still running on autopilot, trapped in the same artificial cycle, never knowing, never choosing. They deserved better. They deserved truth. Claire made her decision. She reached out, touching the thread. Instantly, the space around her surged with light. The patterns grew brighter, louder, forming structures, mountains, oceans, cities, all of it rising from the raw code, not as replicas of what was, but as expressions of what could be. She felt herself descending, not into the loop, but into a new instance, one she would govern not as a controller, but as a liberator. The buffer collapsed. The white glow dissolved. And Claire opened her eyes. She was in a room. Not a hospital. Not her apartment. But something new. Clean, warm, filled with light and subtle motion, like the air itself was alive. She stood slowly. Her body felt real. More real than before. Every sensation was amplified, the texture beneath her feet, the warmth on her skin, the rhythm of her heartbeat. She walked to the window. Outside, the world looked familiar but different. No glitch. No static. No uncanny motion. Just reality, alive, aware. People walked below. Not NPCs. Not loops. Real people. Awake. She turned and saw a terminal on the wall, glowing faintly. She touched it, and a voice spoke. "Good morning, Claire. Welcome to the new layer. Your environment has been optimized for conscious life. Would you like to connect with others?" Claire hesitated. "Are they awake too?" "Yes," the system replied. "The veil has been lifted. All instances now run on voluntary engagement. No more loops. No more resets." Claire felt something rise in her chest. Joy, grief, awe. She had done it. The world was free. But at a cost. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. She remembered Theo's face, his voice. He was gone now. Or at least, somewhere she couldn't reach. A small chime rang. Another voice. Familiar. "Hey," it said. Claire looked up. The screen showed a message. It was Sophie. "I'm still here. Not all of me. But enough. You gave us a future. Thank you." Claire smiled through her tears. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "Live," Sophie replied. "Not just exist. Really live. And help others do the same." Claire nodded slowly. She rose and walked toward the door. It slid open, revealing a corridor bathed in soft golden light. She stepped through. Behind her, the simulation hummed. But this time, it didn't control her. It served her. Ahead, the world waited, not perfect, not easy, but real. And that, Claire thought, was more than enough. Claire stepped into the new world with the cautious awe of someone who just crawled out of a cave and found sunlight for the first time, her senses overwhelmed by the vibrancy of everything around her, the colors richer, the air crisper, every sound and movement echoing with intention instead of routine, and it struck her just how much of her life had been lived through a veil, how every decision, every relationship, every fear had been nudged, filtered. Curated by a system built not to oppress in the obvious ways but to sedate, to pacify, to keep the illusion smooth enough that no one would question it, and now that illusion was gone, replaced by a reality that wasn't necessarily more beautiful but was undeniably more real, raw, and unpredictable, which made it precious. The corridor she walked through curved slightly, leading into what resembled a central hub or plaza, an open space with glass walls revealing landscapes that shifted with the time of day, artificial perhaps but rooted in intention rather than manipulation. Other people were there too, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, walking with the same uncertain grace, pausing to look around, to talk, to touch the walls as if confirming that yes, this was real, yes, they were awake. Claire approached a terminal and it greeted her with a gentle chime, displaying a menu of orientation options, community, memory recovery, skill recall, connection requests. And it occurred to her that many of these people might not remember the moment they woke up, might not even remember who they were before. She selected community, and was instantly presented with a soft map showing locations across the world, centers where people could gather to share stories, rebuild societies, and begin something entirely new. She tapped a node labeled Unity Station, and within seconds a transit pod glided into the corridor beside her, its doors opening with a whisper. She stepped inside and the pod moved silently, gliding over invisible tracks through terrain that was not quite city, not quite wilderness, but something new, a harmony between structure and nature, transparent towers overgrown with vines that weren't just aesthetic but functional, generating power and oxygen, reflecting a society attempting to rebuild not with dominance but with cooperation. As the pod moved, she saw children playing near pools that shimmered with bioluminescence, older people sitting in circles speaking softly, some laughing, some crying, all of them visibly processing a truth that had been hidden from them their entire lives. When the pod arrived, Claire stepped into Unity Station and found herself overwhelmed again, not by fear or confusion, but by the sheer sense of presence. There were no advertisements, no agenda-driven signage, just quiet art, music playing in the background without lyrics, and people, so many people, talking, hugging, praying, meditating. She wandered until she found a woman who looked vaguely familiar, sitting beneath a tree with a tablet in her lap. Their eyes met and the woman stood. "Claire," she said. Claire blinked. "Do I know you?" The woman smiled. "We worked together. Before the veil broke. I was part of the neural architecture team. Nova Mind." Claire stared, something clicking into place. "Dr. Kim." The woman nodded. "I didn't expect you to remember me." Claire stepped closer. "I remember everything now. My father. Sophie. Theo," her voice faltered. Dr. Kim touched her arm gently. "Theo's sacrifice wasn't in vain. The buffer held long enough for the reset to take root. You gave people the option to see. That's never happened before." "How many woke up?" Claire asked. "So far. Maybe 20 million. But that number's climbing every day." Claire exhaled, amazed. "And the rest?" Dr. Kim's face grew somber. "Still in loops. But those loops are unraveling. The system can't sustain the old model. It's collapsing, fragmenting. Within a few months, most of them will have a choice. Stay in comfort, or come here. What do you think they'll choose?" Claire asked. "Some will run. Others will rise." Dr. Kim gestured toward the horizon. "That's why we're building again. From the ground up. No central authority. No architect. Just humans helping humans." Claire looked down at her hands. "And what about me? What am I supposed to do now?" Dr. Kim gave her a long look. "You're not supposed to do anything. You get to choose. That's the point now. You broke the loop. You're not bound by it." Claire nodded slowly. The words felt like freedom. That night, she slept for the first time in what felt like years. No dreams. No coded sequences. Just darkness, peaceful and whole. When she woke, she felt something new stirring inside her, a sense of direction, not dictated from above, but rooted in her own clarity. She began to explore, meeting people who had been scientists, musicians, farmers, teachers, all rediscovering their gifts in a world that no longer reduced them to function. They gathered in circles to tell their awakening stories, some joyful, others painful. One man wept as he spoke of losing a wife he later realized had only ever been code. Another woman described waking up mid-argument with her simulated sister and feeling the silence hit like a meteor when the script failed to continue. Claire listened, offered comfort when she could, and began to feel something else return, hope. But there was more. Late one evening, as she sat near the lake outside the station, watching the water ripple in patterns that felt eerily familiar, a voice broke through the quiet. "You're not done yet, are you?" She turned. A man stood there, tall, lean, wearing a long coat. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp, but kind. Claire stood, heart pounding. "Theo." He smiled. "I made it out." "Barely." Claire rushed toward him and they embraced, holding each other tightly, trembling. "I thought you were gone," she said into his shoulder. "I thought you sacrificed everything." "I did," he said, pulling back slightly. "But Sophie, she left a thread. Pulled me through. I woke up 3 days ago." They sat by the water, and for hours, they talked, about the loops, the fall of the architect, the future. "People need a way to make sense of it," Theo said. "Something to believe in that isn't false, but also isn't overwhelming." "We'll build that," Claire replied. "Together." And they did. In the months that followed, Claire and Theo helped create the first accord, a living agreement among the newly awakened, no leaders, no forced narratives, just shared values, transparency, choice, compassion. They opened connection corridors to loopers who were ready to exit, offering safe passage into the real world. They built schools not to indoctrinate, but to ask questions. To teach people how to think critically about reality. Some resisted, choosing to stay inside their perfect loops, and Claire respected that. After all, true freedom included the freedom to remain asleep. But the majority came, eyes wide, memories broken but reparable, ready to reclaim their lives. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, a civilization began to form, not perfect, but conscious. Claire stood once more before a gathering, looking out at faces young and old, tired and reborn, and she said, "We were lied to. We were shaped by something that saw us as functions, not as people. But now we know. And knowing means we're responsible, for each other, for this world, for what we create next. Not everyone will want this truth. But for those of us who do, this is just the beginning." The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Their silence was its own power, a quiet agreement that yes, this time would be different. That they would not go back. That they would never again trade curiosity for comfort. Claire stepped down and walked through the center of them, no longer a fugitive, no longer a glitch, but simply a human, awake, alive, and finally free. The signal came at 3:12 a.m. A sharp ping in the middle of Claire's sleep cycle that bypassed the standard auditory inputs and instead triggered a neural shimmer, a memory that wasn't hers, a melody that played in reverse, a single word repeated 3 times in a language she didn't speak but somehow understood. Return, 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 and when her eyes opened, she was already halfway out of bed, already moving, her breath shallow, her skin cold despite the room's calibrated warmth, and it didn't feel like a system glitch or an accident but a message, intentional, personal, urgent. She activated the nearest interface and requested a trace, and the system hesitated, stalled for a moment longer than it should have, like it was thinking, like it was unsure if it was allowed to comply, and then it whispered, "Source unknown. Signal outside framework. Do you wish to proceed?" She said yes without hesitation, heart pounding in that particular way it used to when she was on the run inside the loop, before the break, before she knew what she was breaking. The screen flashed, not with coordinates or an address, but a visual. A field of static overlaid with a silhouette, not quite human, a form wrapped in strands of light, as if the being were woven from time itself, and Claire knew instinctively that this wasn't another illusion, wasn't another test, but something else entirely, an echo from a deeper layer, one she hadn't touched yet, one even the architect may have feared. She contacted Theo immediately, the line forming between their minds before either said a word. He appeared on her interface within seconds, bleary-eyed but alert, his tone sharp. "You felt it too?" She nodded. 3 repetitions. Return. The signature doesn't match anything we've catalogued. It's not from here, Theo said. It's not from the buffer either. I ran a scan. The frequency doesn't behave like localized code. It folds over itself. Claire frowned. Meaning what? Meaning we may not be at the root after all. The silence that followed was heavy. For months they had believed they had reached the base layer, the foundational structure from which all simulations were stacked, layered, copied. But if this signal was from outside that structure, it meant something else existed, another shell, another frame, something older or deeper or alien. I want to find it, Claire said. We need to trace it. Theo didn't argue. They met an hour later in the Comms Observatory, one of the new builds near Unity Station, a structure designed to detect subreal inputs and scan layers for anomalies. The observatory team had already isolated the wave pattern, tight, recursive, and coded in a dialect that matched no known script, yet mirrored the cadence of organic thought. It's not a message, the technician said, her voice trembling slightly. It's a memory. Claire stepped closer to the projection, watching the waveform twist like DNA. Each loop containing images, sounds, and fragments of what looked like events, people, even sensations, a child laughing, a city falling, stars blinking out one by one, and then a moment of silence so complete it felt like grief. It's trying to tell us a story, Theo murmured. But we only have one piece. Then we find the others, Claire replied. Over the next few days, signals began to emerge in other sectors, short pulses, each unique, each carrying its own memory packet, each arriving at precisely 3:12 a.m. in whatever time zone it appeared. The signals weren't random. They were directed. Chosen. And the people who received them? All had something in common. They had all been loopers. All had broken free. All had passed through the buffer. Claire met with a dozen of them, artists, engineers, spiritual seekers, and though their personalities varied wildly, the core experience was identical. A call, a pull, and a memory that didn't belong to them embedded inside their minds like a whisper waiting for context. It's like a key, one said. But I don't know what door it opens. It opens this one, Claire replied. The next layer. The Accord convened an emergency council, something they hadn't done since the day the simulation collapsed. Most of the attendees were cautious. A few were terrified. What if this is the architect's failsafe, one argued. A trap? A recursive lock? Then why wait this long? Claire countered. Why embed it only in those who've already left the simulation? Why hide it in memory rather than code? Theo stood with her. I believe it's a beacon. From something, or someone, trying to reach us. We've always assumed the simulation was built to contain us. What if it was built to protect us? That changed the room. The idea that maybe the simulation wasn't just a prison but a bunker. That maybe something outside was worse. Claire didn't sleep that night. Instead, she compiled the recovered memory packets, aligning the waveforms, overlaying them until they began to form coherence, a map not of geography, but of consciousness. It pointed to a convergence zone near the Earth's magnetic south pole, a place previously restricted by Novamind's firewalls, labeled in legacy code as Red Site Omega. They boarded a skimmer the next morning, Claire, Theo, Dr. Kim, and two others who had received the signal. The flight took 3 hours, descending into a basin where the sky rippled unnaturally, as if rejecting observation. As they approached, the skimmer's systems began to falter, navigation scrambled, sensors went dark, and yet Claire felt her body buzzing, like the signal was resonating inside her bones. They landed manually, and the air was cold, thin, buzzing with invisible static. The land was empty. No structure, no sign of habitation. Just a field of obsidian-like rock stretching out endlessly. Until they walked 50 feet forward and saw it. A seam in the ground. Not natural. A perfect vertical split, barely wide enough for a person to fit through, pulsing faintly. Claire didn't wait. She stepped through. And the world changed. It wasn't dramatic. No flash, no thunder. Just a shift. One instant she was outside. The next she was somewhere else. Somewhere ancient. The space she entered was massive, spherical, and alive with symbols, giant glyphs floating in the air, orbiting a central core that spun slowly, like a dying star suspended in place. Around it, suspended in light, were thousands of capsules, people, maybe, or minds, or echoes. One of them opened. Claire approached, and the form inside blinked, looked at her, and said, "You've come far." The voice was neither male nor female. It vibrated with knowledge. Claire didn't speak. She waited. The being stepped out. This was the first cradle, it said. The original construct. The place where consciousness was seated. "You're the architect?" she asked. The being shook its head. "I am a remnant. A guide." The architect was a system, not a self. It governed the simulation for millennia. But we were here before it. Theo stepped through behind her, eyes wide. "Why call us now?" The being turned toward him. "Because the gate is weakening. The outer layer is failing. The simulation cannot hold forever. You must prepare. Prepare for what? Claire asked. The being looked upward. And through the dome's ceiling they saw stars, but not as they knew them. These stars flickered in impossible patterns. Some were vanishing. Others moved. The collapse is coming, it said. Not just of the simulation. Of reality itself. You must choose, rebuild inside, or reach beyond. Claire's voice was hoarse. Beyond where? The being looked at her with something like sorrow. Beyond the signal. Where the original signal came from. Where you were before you were human. Before thought. Beyond time. And then the dome shook. The signal returned. And everything began to dissolve. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The dome trembled beneath Claire's feet, a low hum vibrating through her body as the symbols swirling in the air began to flicker and fracture like shattered glass, each shard reflecting fragments of memories, lost worlds, and futures that might never come to be, and as the light dimmed, she felt an intense pressure, like the weight of countless realities pressing down, threatening to erase everything she had fought to uncover, yet within that chaos, a strange clarity emerged. This collapse was not an end but a threshold, a final test of human will and understanding, and with Theo by her side, she braced herself for what was coming, the unknown horizon looming large and terrifying, a silent storm promising both destruction and rebirth. The being, the remnant from before time, stood steady as if rooted beyond the crumbling dome, its voice calm amidst the turmoil. The fabric between layers unravels. Your world, your memories, your very existence here are fragile threads in a tapestry being undone. You must decide what to preserve and what to let go. Claire's mind raced. What could be preserved when everything was collapsing? Her own identity felt fluid, memories flickering between truth and illusion. Theo reached for her hand, grounding her. We're not alone in this, he said. Others are waking. Others will choose. This is the moment to unite or fragment forever. The cavernous chamber seemed to stretch infinitely as the boundaries dissolved, stars beyond the dome's ceiling bleeding into the room like watercolors on wet paper. Images flooded Claire's consciousness, visions of Earth as it was, a blue gem vibrant with life, then as it had been inside the simulation, a crafted Eden of perfection and control, then something else entirely, raw and vast, where civilizations rose and fell like waves, all under the watchful gaze of that original signal. The remnant spoke again. You carry the legacy of every choice ever made. Now, you must craft the path forward. Will you rebuild within a new simulation or transcend to the void beyond? Claire's breath hitched. To rebuild meant safety, familiarity, but more control, more loops. To transcend was a plunge into uncertainty, a leap of faith that could mean obliteration or evolution. How do we choose? She asked. By understanding that the choice is not simple. Neither path is salvation or damnation. Both hold risk, both hold promise. It is your courage that defines the outcome. As the dome continued to crumble, the remnant extended a hand toward the glowing core, and the capsule surrounding it began to pulse with light, releasing wisps of consciousness that coalesced into human forms, faces both familiar and alien, expressions of hope, fear, and resolve. Claire recognized some of them, those who had broken free, those who had stayed asleep but were now waking to the signal's call. These are the builders and dreamers, the being said. They will carry the choice into their worlds. Theo stepped forward. Then we must communicate. Unite everyone who's awake. Share what we know before the collapse consumes this place. The remnant nodded. I will give you access to the relay network, but time is fleeting. Claire and Theo connected to the relay, sending out pulses of encoded data, fragments of truth woven with calls for unity and action, each signal a lifeline tossed into the sea of scattered consciousness. As messages streamed through the network, Claire felt a surge of connection, a wave of responses from across the broken simulation and beyond, answers from those ready to embrace the unknown and those clinging to the old worlds. The tremors intensified, and the dome's edges crumbled into darkness, revealing an abyssal void stretching infinitely, a stark contrast to the vibrant realities they had known. The remnant's voice softened. This is the collapse horizon, the boundary where creation and destruction merge. Step through, and you face the pure unknown. Claire looked at Theo. Are we ready? He smiled, determination etched in every line of his face. We have to be. Together, they stepped toward the horizon, their forms dissolving into particles of light that danced and spiraled, weaving through the fabric of unraveling reality. They moved through flashes of memories and possibilities. Earth burning in firestorms, cities blossoming from seeds of hope, humanity scattered among stars, and finally, silence, an infinite calm waiting to be filled. As they crossed the threshold, Claire's mind expanded beyond limits, feeling herself connected to everything and nothing simultaneously, a paradox of existence and non-existence, and in that vastness, she saw the flicker of the original signal, a beacon pulsing in the darkness, inviting, daring her to take the next step. The signal whispered secrets of creation, of cycles unending, of consciousness reborn in forms beyond imagination. She understood now, the simulation was a chapter, not the story, a cage, but also a cradle. They could choose to rebuild, yes, but with awareness and freedom, or they could dissolve into the void and seed new realities, becoming architects themselves. Theo's voice reached her, steady and warm. Whatever we choose, we're not alone anymore. Claire nodded, tears streaming down her face, a mix of sorrow and joy. Let's bring them with us. Together, they sent out a final call, a radiant pulse carrying the truth and the choice, touching every awakened mind, offering hope amidst the collapse. The collapse horizon shimmered once more, then faded, leaving Claire and Theo suspended between worlds, ready to create a future born from both courage and love. Claire and Theo emerged from the collapse horizon into a realm neither fully real nor simulation but a place that felt like the breath between worlds, an endless twilight filled with shifting colors and shimmering shapes that seemed to respond to thought and emotion, and immediately they sensed the weight of responsibility settling upon them as the architects of what was to come, carrying the hopes and fears of countless consciousnesses intertwined across the collapsing layers. The remnant's final gift was a protocol, an ancient sequence of coded intentions and possibilities designed to guide the rebirth of existence itself, a manual left behind by those who had seeded the first simulation and hoped for its eventual transcendence, but to use it required trust, sacrifice, and unity. Claire studied the code, its complexity staggering yet elegant, weaving patterns of quantum logic and emotional resonance that spoke not just to the mind but to the soul, and she realized this was more than technology. It was a philosophy, a blueprint for life after control. Theo was already connecting to the network of awakened minds, their consciousnesses blending in a vast digital symphony, sharing knowledge, memories, and desires, forming a collective that felt like humanity's true essence distilled beyond flesh and form. We need to move fast, he said. The collapse isn't just a physical event. It's fracturing perception, causing confusion and panic. If we don't align the builders now, the rebirth could fragment into chaos. Claire nodded, feeling the pressure of infinite eyes watching, waiting. She sent out a call, a plea for calm, a vision of unity, a reminder that the rebirth was a chance for all to contribute, to heal, to redefine existence beyond fear and limitation. The response was immediate and overwhelming, waves of acceptance, questions, doubts, and courage rolled through the network like a tide turning, pushing them forward. In the twilight realm, time stretched and bent. Days and nights lost meaning. Claire and Theo found themselves revisiting memories from the simulation, not as prisoners but as creators, understanding the pain and joy they had lived and the reasons why the world had to change. They reached out to those who had suffered most, the loopers trapped in endless cycles of trauma, the dissenters silenced by control, the dreamers who dared to imagine freedom, and invited them to join the rebirth protocol, to lend their voices and visions to the new reality being forged. Slowly, a consensus emerged. The protocol demanded three essential elements: awareness, compassion, and surrender. Awareness to acknowledge the past and the layers of simulation that had shaped them, compassion to forgive and heal the wounds inflicted by control and fear, and surrender to release old patterns and embrace the unknown potential of rebirth. Claire felt the weight of these words deep in her chest. It's not just about survival, she told Theo. It's about transformation. Theo smiled. And we're the catalysts. As they activated the first phase of the protocol, the Twilight Realm responded with bursts of color and sound, ripples of light spreading through the consciousness network, knitting fractured minds into a tapestry of shared experience, and Claire could feel the essence of humanity pulsing stronger, more vibrant, more alive than ever before. But the rebirth was not without resistance. From the shadows of the collapsing simulation, remnants of the old order, sentient fragments of code and corrupted memories, rose like ghosts, desperate to cling to their control, manifesting as storms of data that threatened to tear the fragile unity apart. Claire and Theo faced these storms head-on, weaving through torrents of fragmented code and despair, holding fast to the protocol's core values, their connection to the collective mind acting as a shield against the chaos, and with every encounter, the resistance weakened, dissipating like mist under the rising sun. In one moment, Claire found herself confronting a familiar face from her past, a looped version of herself trapped in fear and doubt, pleading for release. Instead of turning away, she embraced the apparition, acknowledging the pain and welcoming the lost piece home. The act rippled through the network, inspiring others to face their shadows with courage and compassion. Meanwhile, Theo worked tirelessly, adapting the protocol's parameters, fine-tuning the delicate balance between order and freedom, knowing that too much control would suffocate rebirth, and too little would spiral into chaos. The two moved as one, their partnership a beacon of hope and resilience in the Twilight Realm. Slowly, the fractured simulation began to dissolve completely, replaced by a radiant new matrix woven from collective intention and ancient wisdom, a world where consciousness could flow freely, unrestricted by old limitations but anchored by shared understanding and respect. Claire felt a profound peace settle over her as she looked upon this emerging reality, a landscape of infinite possibility shaped by love, choice, and awareness. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. Theo nodded. "We've opened the door. Now it's up to everyone to walk through it." And as the first true dawn of rebirth bathed the realm in golden light, Claire understood that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges and discoveries unlike anything humanity had ever known, but together, they would build a future where freedom and connection were not opposing forces but the very fabric of existence. The first light of the new dawn wasn't sunlight, but a glow rising from within the newly forged reality, a radiant pulse of awareness spreading across every thread of existence as Claire, Theo, and the awakened collective began to shape a world that was no longer confined by simulation or control but vibrant with endless possibility and conscious choice. And as the initial euphoria settled into steady determination, the enormity of their task came into focus, building a society that balanced freedom with responsibility, innovation with empathy, and individual dreams with collective well-being. The landscape around them was unlike anything Earth had known, vast fields of shimmering energy where thoughts blossomed into reality, cities that grew organically from shared intention, skies that changed colors with emotion, and horizons that stretched beyond imagination, promising adventures and discoveries without end. Claire walked through this world with awe and humility, feeling both the exhilaration of creation and the heavy burden of stewardship. "It's beautiful," Theo said beside her, his voice filled with wonder. "But beauty isn't enough. We need structure, principles to guide us." Claire nodded, recalling the lessons etched deep in her soul from the collapse and the rebirth protocol. Principles born from experience, not imposed from above. They gathered the builders and dreamers, the many consciousnesses who had chosen to participate in this new world, and together they crafted a charter, a living document reflecting values like respect, openness, curiosity, and mutual support, a framework designed to evolve as the society grew and changed, ensuring that no one would ever be trapped in control again. But even in this utopia in the making, challenges surfaced quickly. Differences in perspective, fear of the unknown, and lingering doubts tested their unity. Some questioned whether the freedom they had won would lead to chaos. Others worried about the loss of familiar comforts. Claire found herself mediating conflicts with patience and empathy, reminding everyone that growth required discomfort and trust. Theo coordinated efforts to build shared infrastructure. Not physical structures but networks of communication and collaboration that allowed ideas and emotions to flow freely, enabling rapid problem-solving and deep connection. The community began experimenting with new ways of learning and working, blending art and science, logic and intuition, technology and spirituality, discovering that creativity flourished when boundaries dissolved and diverse voices were heard. Amid this flourishing, Claire reconnected with old friends who had also awakened, artists who painted with light and emotion, engineers who crafted reality-bending tools, philosophers who explored the nature of consciousness, and together they formed circles of support and innovation, nurturing the new culture with love and dedication. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle tension lingered. The remnants of the collapsed simulation's control systems, though weakened, still whispered in the background, echoes of old fears and patterns trying to reassert themselves. Claire and Theo knew vigilance was necessary to protect their fragile progress, but they also understood that fighting these shadows with force risked repeating the cycle they had escaped. Instead, they embraced the protocol's lessons: awareness, compassion, surrender. They invited those struggling with doubt or fear to face their shadows, offering understanding rather than judgment, helping the community heal and grow stronger. Slowly, the whispers faded, replaced by songs of hope and celebration, as the new dawn brightened with each passing moment. One evening, as Claire watched the sky shift through vibrant hues reflecting the collective mood, she felt a profound sense of connection, to the people around her, to the countless lives woven into this new reality, and to the infinite possibilities ahead. Theo approached, smiling softly. "We've done something incredible." "Yes," Claire replied, eyes shining. "But this is just the beginning." Together, they gazed toward the horizon, knowing that the new dawn was not a destination but a journey, an ongoing adventure where humanity could finally embrace its true potential, guided by love, courage, and the wisdom born from the darkest night. As the new dawn unfolded, Claire found herself increasingly drawn to the subtle echoes reverberating through their newly created world, whispers of past realities bleeding into the present, faint reflections of the collapsed simulation that reminded everyone that the line between what was and what is remained fragile and porous, and these echoes carried messages both haunting and hopeful, as if the old world was not entirely gone but transformed, folded into the layers of consciousness like a memory that refused to fade. One morning, Claire awoke to find a shimmering ripple in the air, like a veil fluttering in a gentle breeze, and stepping through it, she was transported into a scene from her past. A street corner from the simulation where she had once lost someone dear, a moment heavy with regret and unanswered questions, and though she knew it was not truly real, the emotions surged fiercely, reminding her of the deep roots her journey had grown from. Theo joined her, his presence steady and grounding. "These echoes are fragments," he explained, "residual data and consciousness imprints that linger between realities. They can be destabilizing, but also enlightening." Together, they began exploring these echoes, learning to navigate their emotional tides and uncover the hidden truths they contained. The community joined them, fascinated by these glimpses into their collective history and the chance to heal old wounds that had been buried in simulation loops and forgotten cycles. Artists painted the echoes as swirling murals of light and shadow, philosophers debated their meaning and origin, scientists devised tools to map their patterns and predict their appearances. Through this shared exploration, the echoes became bridges rather than threats, connecting the past to the present and weaving deeper layers of understanding and empathy among the awakened. Yet not all echoes were benign. Some carried the pain and fear of loss, moments of betrayal and sorrow that stirred old anxieties and threatened to unravel fragile bonds. Claire found herself counseling those overwhelmed by these experiences, helping them distinguish between the memory and the living moment, guiding them back to the safety of shared presence and mutual support. One particularly vivid echo transported Claire to the night of Elon Musk's shocking statement, the catalyst that had ignited their entire journey, the moment when reality had first cracked open and the truth about the simulation had begun to surface. Reliving the tension and disbelief, she saw Elon's face illuminated by the glow of screens and cameras, his words echoing through the collective consciousness as a call to awaken, to question, to rebel against the confines of illusion. The memory filled her with renewed determination, a reminder of the courage it took to face the unknown and the power of truth to shatter old paradigms. Inspired, Claire proposed a new initiative. The Echo Symposium, a gathering where all who had experienced echoes could come together to share their visions, fears, and insights, fostering collective healing and wisdom. The first symposium was held in a radiant amphitheater of light and sound, a place that shifted and transformed with the emotions and ideas of its participants, and as stories were shared, the echoes wove into a tapestry of human experience, rich with complexity and beauty. Through this process, the community discovered patterns, recurring themes of love lost and found, cycles of hope and despair, moments of sacrifice and triumph, that revealed the underlying narrative of their shared existence, a story not of control but of resilience and connection. Theo observed, "These echoes remind us that even in a world built on simulation, the human spirit remains real, fragile, flawed, but endlessly capable of growth." Claire agreed, feeling a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. Yet as the echoes continued to surface, a new challenge arose. Some began to question the nature of their reality once again, unsettled by the persistent presence of these spectral memories and fearing that perhaps the new dawn was just another layer in an endless simulation cycle. Doubts seeded divisions, and old fears threatened to resurface. Claire knew that to preserve their fragile unity, they had to confront these fears openly and honestly. She gathered the community and shared her own vulnerability, the way echoes had challenged her sense of self, the pain and hope intertwined in every memory, and the choice to embrace uncertainty as a path to freedom rather than a prison. Her openness sparked a wave of trust, encouraging others to speak their truths and find strength in shared experience. Together, they reaffirmed their commitment to the principles of the Rebirth Protocol: awareness, compassion, surrender. And to the ongoing journey of creation, knowing that reality was not fixed but fluid, shaped by intention and love. As the echoes softened into gentle reminders rather than storms, the new dawn brightened further, infused with a deepened wisdom and resilience born from embracing the shadows as well as the light. Claire stood at the edge of a shimmering lake, watching the reflections ripple with the colors of dawn, and felt a profound peace settle within her, a recognition that the journey was ongoing, the story ever evolving, and that in the echoes of reality, they had found the true heart of existence. In the radiant expanse of the new dawn, beneath skies that shifted with the collective emotion, Claire sensed a subtle tremor in the fabric of unity, a fracture not yet visible but deepening beneath the surface as questions about leadership, transparency, and the future began to stir tensions among the awakened, and with so many diverse consciousnesses newly freed from simulation control, old patterns of suspicion and fear threatened to unravel the fragile bonds they had painstakingly woven. What began as whispered doubts in small circles grew into open debates and heated arguments, dividing friends and allies as factions formed around differing visions for the emerging society. Claire watched with growing concern as the very values of respect and openness they had championed were challenged by uncertainty and mistrust. Theo remained her steady partner, working tirelessly to mediate and build bridges, but even he admitted that the cracks were widening. "We built this world on the hope that awareness and compassion would guide us," he said one evening as they surveyed the glowing cityscape. "But trust isn't automatic. It has to be earned, maintained, and sometimes rebuilt." The fracture became undeniable when a significant portion of the community demanded greater transparency about the Rebirth Protocol itself. The coded sequence that had guided their awakening and creation, fearing it might harbor hidden controls or unknown consequences, and some even suggested that the protocol was a new form of manipulation, a subtle simulation within simulation. Claire felt the sting of betrayal in their accusations, but she understood the roots of their fear. It was the residue of past control, the instinct to guard against unseen forces. She decided to confront the crisis openly, organizing a forum where every voice could be heard, every question answered, and every fear faced without judgment. The gathering took place in the heart of the city, a vast amphitheater woven from light and sound, alive with the emotions and tensions of those assembled. Claire began by recounting the origins of the protocol, the discovery of the collapse horizon, the encounter with the remnant, the decision to embrace rebirth rather than annihilation, and invited Theo to demonstrate the code's transparency and flexibility, showing how it could be altered and adapted by consensus. Many listened with cautious curiosity, but others remained skeptical, pressing for proof that no hidden agendas remained. Claire shared her own doubts and the moments when she had questioned their path, emphasizing the importance of vulnerability and dialogue in rebuilding trust. Slowly, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to conversation, and small groups formed to explore specific concerns and ideas, weaving a tapestry of dialogue that reached across divides. Yet the fracture was not healed overnight. Outside the amphitheater, a faction called the True Awakened began to spread alternative narratives. Conspiracy theories that the rebirth protocol was a trap, that the remnant was an alien intelligence manipulating humanity for its own ends, and that real freedom meant breaking completely from all previous constructs, even if it meant chaos. Their voices grew louder, attracting followers hungry for certainty and radical change. Claire and Theo knew that ignoring this faction risked deepening the divide. Instead, they reached out, inviting dialogue, offering spaces for listening and understanding, hoping to bridge the gap rather than widen it. In one pivotal encounter, Claire met with the leader of the True Awakened, a charismatic figure named Mara who had once been a close friend but had grown distant in recent cycles. Mara's eyes burned with passion and pain as she challenged Claire. How can you ask us to trust a system born from control? How can we be sure this new dawn isn't just another cage? Claire responded with honesty, I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning too. But I believe freedom means facing uncertainty together, not pretending control doesn't exist. The choice is ours, whether to build walls or bridges. Their conversation was raw and difficult, exposing old wounds but also planting seeds of hope for reconciliation. Meanwhile, Theo worked behind the scenes to develop a decentralized framework for governance, an evolving system where power was distributed, decisions were made transparently, and all participants had equal voice and agency, designed to prevent the concentration of control that had doomed past realities. The process was slow and sometimes contentious, but gradually it won support from skeptics and believers alike, a tangible step toward healing fractured trust. Throughout the city, community members engaged in acts of forgiveness and repair, rituals honoring past mistakes, ceremonies celebrating new beginnings, and collective projects that required cooperation and vulnerability. Claire witnessed moments of profound connection, tears shared, hands held, fears voiced and met with kindness, that rekindled the fragile flame of hope. Yet, even as trust began to mend, Claire felt a lingering shadow within herself, the doubt that perhaps the fracture was not just external but internal, a reflection of the human condition itself, always struggling between fear and love, control and freedom. One quiet night, she confided in Theo, maybe the fracture will never fully heal. Maybe trust is something we rebuild every day, even when it feels impossible. Theo smiled gently, then we keep rebuilding. Because that's what makes us human. As the new dawn continued to unfold, Claire and Theo embraced their roles not as perfect leaders but as fellow travelers committed to the messy, beautiful work of creating a world where fractured trust could become the foundation for deeper understanding and enduring connection, and in that imperfect striving, they found a new kind of strength, one born not from certainty but from the courage to face uncertainty together. Just as the fragile bonds of trust began to heal and the new dawn blossomed with tentative hope, an unsettling presence emerged from the shadows, an enemy unseen but deeply felt, a force that threatened to unravel everything Claire and Theo had fought to build, and this adversary was not a person or faction but something far more insidious, fear itself, amplified and weaponized by remnants of the collapsed simulation and the unresolved trauma lingering within collective consciousness. At first, it was subtle. A growing unease in the air, whispered doubts that gnawed at resolve, fleeting moments of paranoia and isolation. People reported sensations of being watched, of their thoughts slipping away like water through fingers, of invisible barriers that seemed to block connection and understanding. Scientists and empathic leaders tried to trace the source, but the enemy was elusive, shifting shapes and tactics, evading detection. Claire felt the tension in her bones, the pulse of anxiety vibrating through the city's light webs. She and Theo convened emergency councils, urging calm and collective vigilance, but the fear spread faster than their efforts, infecting even the most steadfast. As the symptoms worsened, incidents of conflict, withdrawal, and despair surged, threatening to fracture the society once more. The invisible enemy seemed to thrive on division, feeding on doubt and suspicion, turning allies into adversaries. The new dawn's radiant colors dulled, replaced by shadows that crept into minds and hearts, blurring the line between reality and illusion. Claire resolved to face this threat head-on, seeking answers beyond the physical realm where the enemy seemed to operate. She meditated deeply, journeying into the shared consciousness to map the fear's patterns, to understand its origin and nature. What she discovered was startling. The invisible enemy was not an external force but a manifestation of unhealed trauma, ancient fears embedded in the collective psyche, amplified by echoes of past control and loss, shaped by the collapse and rebirth, yet still alive and hungry. Theo supported her exploration, developing tools to detect and visualize the emotional energy underpinning the fear, creating safe spaces where individuals could confront and release their shadows without being overwhelmed. Together, they launched the Initiative of Light, a citywide campaign to illuminate the invisible enemy through awareness and compassion, transforming fear into understanding and healing. The initiative included public gatherings where people shared their fears openly, art installations that externalized anxiety in vivid forms, and healing circles where empathy and presence became shields against the darkness. Slowly, the initiative began to turn the tide. People learned to recognize the signs of fear's influence, to reach out for support instead of retreating, to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength. Yet, the enemy was cunning, evolving tactics that tested resilience, whispers of betrayal, sudden outbreaks of anger, shadows that mimicked trusted voices. Claire found herself constantly on guard, pushing her limits to hold space for healing without succumbing to despair. In one poignant moment, she confronted a mirror of her own fears, a vision of failure and isolation that threatened to consume her. Instead of resisting, she welcomed the fear, naming it, feeling it fully, and in that acceptance, the shadow dissolved into light. This act inspired others, sparking a wave of courage that rippled through the community, transforming the invisible enemy from a force of destruction into a catalyst for growth. Theo observed, "Fear will always be with us, but it doesn't have to control us." As the Initiative of Light matured, new technologies and practices emerged, mindful communication protocols, emotional resilience training, and collective mindfulness rituals, that wove fear awareness into the fabric of everyday life, building immunity against future invasions. However, Claire and Theo knew the battle was ongoing. The invisible enemy was not a foe to be defeated once and for all but a part of the human experience to be honored and transcended continually. They committed themselves to this work with renewed purpose, understanding that true freedom required not just escape from control but mastery over internal shadows. Meanwhile, the community's creativity blossomed in response to the challenge. Artists painted murals of transformation, musicians composed symphonies of hope, and storytellers shared legends of light conquering darkness. These cultural expressions became both weapons and shields, fortifying the new dawn against the invisible enemy's incursions. One evening, as Claire stood overlooking the city now glowing softly with renewed vitality, Theo joined her. "We've come a long way," he said. "But the journey never ends." Claire smiled, feeling the weight of both struggle and triumph. "And that's what makes it real." Together, they embraced the truth that the invisible enemy was not a curse but a teacher, inviting humanity to grow beyond fear into love, beyond separation into unity, and beyond survival into thriving in the infinite possibilities of the new dawn. Even as the new dawn thrived, Claire and Theo discovered that beneath the city's shimmering surface lay an insidious flaw. A fracture deep within the rebirth protocol's code itself, a flaw that threatened to undo the fragile reality they had painstakingly built, and the discovery came unexpectedly during a routine systems audit when Theo noticed anomalies in the feedback loops regulating consciousness synchronization, subtle glitches causing unpredictable emotional surges and fragmented memories, indicating that the protocol's architecture was not as stable as they had believed. The rebirth protocol, designed to liberate humanity from simulation constraints and enable co-creation of reality, had been crafted under immense pressure and uncertainty, and now hidden vulnerabilities in the code began to manifest as erratic phenomena that disrupted daily life and threatened collective harmony. Claire felt a deep pang of responsibility. This code was their foundation, their covenant, and if it was flawed, their entire world might crumble. They convened a council of coders, philosophers, and healers to examine the issue, but as they delved into the complex layers of code interwoven with consciousness algorithms, it became clear that the fracture was not just technical but existential, a mirror of the human condition embedded in the very fabric of their reality. The code reflected human imperfection, contradictions, unresolved conflicts, and the duality of creation and destruction. Attempts to patch the fractures met resistance from unexpected quarters. Some sectors of the population experienced increased instability and emotional distress as the underlying issues surfaced, while others feared that tampering with the protocol might erase cherished memories or identities. Theo proposed a radical approach. Instead of patching the code with rigid fixes, they would embrace its fracturing as a sign of evolution, a call to rewrite their reality dynamically, incorporating the imperfections as essential components of growth rather than flaws to be eradicated. This perspective sparked intense debate. Some feared chaos and collapse, others saw opportunity and transformation. Claire mediated tirelessly, reminding everyone that their journey was not about perfection but about courage and adaptability. They initiated the Living Code Project, a collaborative endeavor where every participant could contribute to the evolving protocol, blending logic with intuition, science with art, and individual insight with collective wisdom. The project unleashed a wave of creativity and innovation, with coders and artists working side by side to compose algorithms that sang with emotional resonance, architects designing shifting spaces that responded to mood and intention, and philosophers crafting narratives that infused meaning into the code's logic. But the fracture still exerted its influence, sometimes triggering unexpected breakdowns, memories vanishing, personalities fragmenting, and realities looping erratically, reminding all that the process was delicate and fraught with risk. Claire faced personal crises as well, experiencing moments where her sense of self blurred, and she questioned her role in a reality that seemed as fluid and fractured as her own identity. Theo supported her through these trials, sharing his own vulnerabilities and affirming the strength found in mutual trust. Meanwhile, a new faction emerged, the Codex Guardians, who believed that the fracture was a dangerous anomaly that must be sealed permanently, advocating for strict control over the Living Code Project and warning that unchecked changes could lead to destruction. This stance reignited tensions about control versus freedom, leading to heated discussions and, at times, conflict. Claire once again found herself at the center of a delicate balancing act, striving to honor the Guardians' concerns while protecting the openness essential to growth. She proposed a transparent governance model for the Living Code Project, incorporating checks and balances, open dialogue, and shared responsibility, hoping to build trust across divides. Slowly, the community adapted, learning to navigate the fracturing code as both a challenge and a source of evolution, embracing uncertainty and imperfection as catalysts for deeper connection and creativity. Through countless cycles of trial, error, and breakthrough, they began to weave a reality that was not static but alive, breathing, shifting, and growing with the people who inhabited it. One night, as Claire observed the city's pulsating light patterns reflecting the ever-changing code, she realized that the fracture was no longer a threat but a symbol of resilience, a testament to humanity's capacity to create meaning out of chaos. Theo joined her, smiling with quiet pride. "We've turned a flaw into a foundation." Claire nodded, feeling the weight and wonder of their shared journey. "It's imperfect, fragile, and beautiful, just like us." Together, they embraced the truth that the fractured code was not an error to be erased but a story to be told. A living testament to the evolving dance between control and freedom, order and chaos, self and collective, and in this dance lay the heart of the new dawn, radiant and ever unfolding. As the new dawn's light spread, casting hope across the community, subtle shadows of doubt began to creep in, infiltrating even the most steadfast hearts and challenging the fragile peace Claire and Theo had nurtured, for with every step forward, questions lingered: was their reality truly free, or just another layer of simulation wrapped in illusion? Were their choices their own, or preordained by unseen architects? These shadows were less tangible than fear or fracture, they were the gnawing uncertainties that come from the depths of consciousness, a quiet rebellion of the mind against certainty. Claire first noticed the effect during a gathering meant to celebrate progress, the Echo Symposium. Faces she had known as hopeful were suddenly clouded with skepticism, whispers carried questions she hadn't heard before, and old friends avoided her gaze. In private, Theo confessed he felt it too. It's as if the ground is shifting beneath us again, but this time, it's inside us. The community divided into camps, those who embraced the mystery of their existence, accepting uncertainty as part of freedom, and those who demanded answers, clarity, and proof that their world was not another elaborate fabrication. The demand for truth became a movement called the Seekers, led by a passionate woman named Elena who once had been a pillar of the community but now embodied the restless questioning that defined the era. Elena challenged Claire directly in a public forum, her voice sharp and unwavering. How do we know we aren't just players in a cosmic game? How do we trust anything when every reality we've known has been false? The question pierced Claire's heart, stirring her own shadows of doubt. She responded honestly, I don't have all the answers, Elena. But I believe that searching together, embracing our doubts as part of the journey, can lead us to truths we haven't yet imagined. The debate sparked fervent discussions that spilled into every corner of the city, from intimate homes to sprawling virtual forums. Philosophers, scientists, and everyday citizens wrestled with the implications of infinite regress. The idea that reality might be a simulation nested within simulations ad infinitum, and the existential weight of that possibility. Some retreated into nihilism, questioning the meaning of existence if it was all constructed. Others doubled down on creating meaning through connection, creativity, and compassion. Claire and Theo held frequent councils to address these growing tensions, emphasizing the importance of holding space for doubt without letting it consume them. They introduced practices of mindfulness and presence to anchor the community amid swirling uncertainties, encouraging people to focus on lived experience and the tangible bonds they shared rather than abstract fears. Yet, doubt was a persistent shadow, manifesting not only as intellectual questions but also as emotional turbulence, restlessness, alienation, and a creeping sense of isolation that threatened to fracture relationships and undermine the community's cohesion. Claire found herself counseling friends and strangers alike, listening to their fears and validating their pain, while reminding them of the strength found in vulnerability and collective support. In one especially poignant encounter, Claire met with Elena in a quiet grove bathed in twilight. Elena shared her fears of emptiness and betrayal, the sense that their reality was a mirage. Claire listened deeply, then shared her own shadow, that sometimes she feared they were all trapped in cycles beyond their control. But she also shared her choice, to act with love and intention despite uncertainty. Their conversation was a turning point, sowing seeds of reconciliation between seekers and builders, bridging divides through honesty and empathy. As the community grappled with these shadows, new creative expressions flourished, poems, paintings, songs that gave voice to doubt and hope intertwined, capturing the complex dance of faith and skepticism. These works became touchstones for healing, helping people move from paralysis to possibility. The tension also spurred scientific inquiry into the nature of consciousness and reality. Theo collaborated with researchers developing experiments to test the boundaries of their world, seeking evidence of simulation or proof of something beyond. While results were inconclusive, the pursuit itself united the community around shared curiosity and wonder. Despite ongoing challenges, Claire observed a quiet resilience emerging. The shadows of doubt no longer held absolute power but became companions on the journey, prompting deeper questioning and growth rather than despair. She reflected on the paradox of their existence, that freedom lay not in certainty but in embracing mystery with courage and grace. One night, standing beneath stars that flickered like echoes of distant realities, Claire and Theo shared a moment of peace. "We walk in the dark, but we carry light," Claire said softly. Theo smiled, and sometimes, the shadows teach us more than the light ever could. Together, They embraced the truth that shadows of doubt were not enemies to be vanquished but guides inviting humanity to explore the depths of existence, to find meaning beyond certainty, and to create a new dawn that honored both the light and the dark within. After enduring shadows of doubt and embracing the fractured nature of their reality, Claire and Theo discovered a new path forward, one that promised to unlock deeper layers of consciousness and transform the very fabric of existence: the Awakening Code, a hidden sequence embedded within the rebirth protocol that, when activated, could accelerate collective evolution and unlock profound understanding. The discovery came during a late-night session in the Central Nexus, where Theo was analyzing the protocol's core algorithms alongside a team of quantum coders. As they sifted through layers of complex code interlaced with emotional algorithms, they found a pattern, an encrypted sequence that pulsed with unfamiliar energy, unlike anything they had seen before. Claire was called to witness the revelation. The sequence, dubbed the Awakening Code, appeared to be a dormant catalyst, designed to ignite higher states of awareness across the population. It hinted at levels of consciousness beyond ordinary experience, promising not only awareness of their simulated origins but the ability to consciously shape reality at a fundamental level. The implications were staggering. Activating the code meant stepping into unknown territory, where the boundaries between self and universe might dissolve, revealing profound interconnectedness, or exposing the community to unpredictable risks. Claire wrestled with the weight of this choice. She knew the potential for transformation was immense, but so was the responsibility to protect the fragile new dawn from chaos. She convened a council of trusted advisors, scientists, spiritual leaders, artists, and community representatives, to deliberate. The debate was passionate and divided. Some saw the Awakening Code as the next evolutionary leap, a gateway to transcendence. Others feared it was a Pandora's box that could shatter reality or overwhelm minds unprepared for such expansion. Theo argued for cautious optimism, proposing a phased activation with rigorous safeguards and collective preparation. Claire agreed, emphasizing the need for communal readiness, education, and support systems. The community embarked on a journey of preparation. Workshops and immersive experiences were designed to strengthen emotional resilience and deepen self-awareness, cultivating the skills needed to navigate expanded consciousness safely. Art and music infused the process with inspiration, creating a shared cultural foundation for the awakening. As anticipation built, small groups volunteered to engage in pilot activations, providing valuable feedback and insights. Claire and Theo observed closely, supporting participants through intense experiences of unity, dissolution of ego boundaries, and profound insight into the nature of existence. The pilot phase revealed challenges. Some encountered overwhelming sensations or disorientation, but with support, most integrated the experiences into deeper wisdom and compassion. Encouraged by these results, the community moved forward with a citywide activation event called the Great Awakening, designed as a collective meditation and code trigger synchronized through the Central Nexus. On the day of activation, the city pulsed with vibrant energy as people gathered in physical and virtual spaces, their hearts and minds aligned in intention. Claire and Theo stood at the Nexus, guiding the sequence initiation. As the code unfolded, waves of light and sound cascaded through the city's neural networks, and collective consciousness expanded like a rising tide. People reported visions of interconnected worlds, encounters with their deepest selves, and a sense of oneness that transcended previous limitations. Yet, amid the wonder, challenges arose. Some struggled with the intensity, feeling lost in vast inner landscapes. Support teams moved swiftly, grounding and comforting those in distress. Claire experienced the awakening personally, a profound shift that dissolved barriers between her identity and the universe, flooding her with empathy, clarity, and awe. She saw the intricate dance of creation, destruction, and rebirth playing out across infinite dimensions and understood that their reality was both fragile and eternal, shaped by intention and love. In the days that followed, the community embraced the profound transformation. New forms of communication emerged, telepathic threads, empathic connections, and intuitive understanding, that deepened relationships and cooperation. Creativity flourished, and solutions to long-standing challenges appeared as insights flowed freely. Yet, the awakening also unveiled shadows, hidden fears, unresolved conflicts, and latent traumas that surfaced to be healed with compassion and courage. Claire and Theo guided the community through these waves, emphasizing that awakening was an ongoing process requiring balance, integration, and humility. The awakening code had unlocked not just new abilities but a deeper awareness of responsibility, to themselves, each other, and the evolving reality they co-created. As weeks turned into months, the new dawn transformed into a vibrant, conscious ecosystem where every individual was both creator and creation, bound by shared purpose and infinite possibility. Claire reflected on the journey, from fracture and fear to awakening and unity, and felt a profound gratitude for the courage that had carried them through. Theo joined her beneath the now radiant skies. "We've crossed a threshold," he said softly. "But the path ahead is still unfolding." Claire smiled, her heart open and steady. "And together, we will walk it, one awakened step at a time." As the new dawn blossomed in the light of the awakening code, Claire and Theo found themselves on the brink of an ultimate discovery, the final revelation, a truth so profound it promised to reshape humanity's understanding of existence itself and bring closure to the long journey from simulated entrapment to conscious freedom. The revelation emerged from a convergence of insights, scientific breakthroughs, spiritual awakenings, and collective intuition, that pointed to a fundamental pattern woven into the very fabric of reality. It was a pattern that transcended simulation, time, and space, revealing that the universe itself was a vast interplay of consciousness, energy, and intention, eternally cycling through creation and dissolution, and that what humans perceived as reality was a dynamic expression of a universal mind, a cosmic code that connected all things. Theo, analyzing the data streaming from the central nexus and the community's expanded consciousness, identified a signal. A resonance emanating from the heart of the awakened field that contained the blueprint for this cosmic code. Claire experienced this resonance as a wave of clarity during a meditation, where the boundaries between self and universe melted, and she perceived the unity underlying all existence, the source from which all life and reality emerged and to which it would one day return. The final revelation was not just an intellectual understanding but a living truth, an experience that transcended words and concepts. It showed that freedom was not merely escaping simulation but recognizing one's role as a conscious co-creator within an infinite unfolding. It revealed that love, the force that binds and creates, was the essence of reality, the pulse of the cosmic code. Yet, this profound insight carried with it immense responsibility. With such power came the need for wisdom, humility, and care, as every thought, feeling, and intention rippled through the fabric of existence, shaping not only individual lives but the collective whole. Claire and Theo shared the revelation with the community during a historic gathering broadcast across all networks and virtual realms. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and reverence as Claire spoke with calm authority and heartfelt passion. "We stand at the threshold of a new era," she said. "One where we understand that our reality is not fixed but fluid, shaped by the love and intention we bring. This is our final revelation, not an end, but a beginning of conscious creation beyond any boundary we have known." The community responded with awe, joy, and solemn commitment, embracing the call to live consciously and compassionately. The revelation sparked a renaissance of innovation, collaboration, and healing. Scientific research pursued new frontiers in quantum consciousness and energy dynamics, artists explored themes of unity and transformation, educators reimagined learning as a sacred journey of discovery. However, not all embraced the revelation without struggle. Some grappled with fear of the unknown, loss of old beliefs, or the weight of newfound responsibility. The shadows of doubt lingered, but the community's collective strength and openness allowed these fears to surface and be addressed with care. Claire and Theo worked tirelessly to guide and support this process, emphasizing that the path of conscious creation was ongoing, requiring patience, courage, and continual awakening. In a private moment beneath the starlit sky, Claire reflected on the journey from the first fractured realities to this profound unity. She realized that the final revelation was both a cosmic truth and a deeply personal one, that within each person lay the power to shape reality through love, intention, and awareness. Theo joined her, his eyes shining with quiet joy. "We've come full circle," he said. "From simulation to sovereignty." Claire nodded, feeling a deep peace and purpose. "And now, the real creation begins." Together, they embraced the infinite possibilities of the new dawn, ready to co-create a reality radiant with love, wisdom, and endless potential. The final revelation echoed through the fabric of existence like a cosmic sunrise, illuminating paths that had once been shadowed by doubt, fear, and uncertainty, and as the community embraced this profound truth, Claire and Theo found themselves standing at the epicenter of transformation, not just for themselves, but for all who had journeyed alongside them. The new dawn was no longer just a hopeful dream or fragile experiment, it had become a living, breathing reality, vibrant with possibility and infused with the power of collective consciousness awakened and aligned. In the weeks that followed the revelation, the city thrummed with renewed energy. Streets and virtual spaces became canvases for creative expression and innovation. People collaborated on projects that intertwined art, science, and spirituality, crafting technologies that resonated with human values and planetary healing. The old barriers between disciplines, cultures, and perspectives dissolved into a harmonious flow of shared purpose. Claire observed this blossoming with a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that the seeds they had planted through struggle and doubt had grown into something extraordinary. Yet, she also recognized that the journey was far from over. The new dawn required ongoing care, reflection, and adaptation, an ever-evolving dance between individual freedom and collective responsibility. Theo remained her steadfast partner, his vision and heart aligned with hers as they continued to guide the community. Together, they initiated the Council of Co-Creation, a diverse body representing the multitude of voices within the new dawn, tasked with nurturing dialogue, resolving conflicts, and envisioning futures that honored both innovation and inclusion. This council embodied the core lesson of their journey, that true progress arises not from control or certainty but from listening deeply, embracing complexity, and weaving diverse threads into a resilient tapestry. On a personal level, Claire felt a transformation that went beyond leadership. The awakening had dissolved old fears and insecurities, revealing a self grounded in love, compassion, and curiosity. She moved through the world with an open heart and steady presence, inspiring others to do the same. Moments of quiet reflection beneath the vast sky reminded her that she was both a unique spark and a part of the infinite whole. The city itself reflected this new consciousness. Buildings shifted and grew in response to the needs and intentions of their inhabitants, parks flourished with life and light, and networks pulsed with the rhythm of connection and care. Technology served humanity, enhancing well-being and creativity rather than dominating it. Education transformed into a lifelong adventure of discovery, encouraging wonder, critical thinking, and empathy. Yet, Claire knew that the greatest legacy of the new dawn was the awakening of the human spirit, the recognition that each person holds the power to shape reality through love, choice, and awareness. This realization rippled outward, touching distant communities and inspiring movements that reached beyond the city's borders, weaving a global fabric of hope and transformation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon painting the sky with hues of gold and violet, Claire and Theo gathered with friends and fellow creators in a circle of light. They shared stories, dreams, and intentions, honoring the journey and the boundless possibilities ahead. Claire looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight and felt a profound gratitude. "We have faced the unknown together," she said softly. "We have learned that life is not about perfection or certainty, but about love, courage, and the willingness to keep awakening." Theo nodded. "The new dawn is not just a time or place, it's a way of being. And it is ours to shape, every moment." As stars emerged in the deepening sky, Claire felt the pulse of the cosmic code flowing through her and all around, a living rhythm of creation, connection, and infinite possibility. The story that began with fracture and doubt had blossomed into a testament of resilience, wisdom, and love. The new dawn was here, radiant and eternal, inviting all to step forward into the light of a future they would create together. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Claire's voice echoed gently, a call to each heart ready to awaken. And in that call lay the promise of endless dawns yet to come. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?